Hello. So this week on the podcast, I'm going to be answering listener questions. I'm so excited to be doing this today because we got a wide range of questions. We got a COVID question, we got a pronouns question that I'm going to answer at the very end, and a question about economic systems as well as the federal government. So it should be really fun today. I wanted to start off by saying thank you to everyone that follows me on Spotify or follows me on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. I think that we talk about a lot of important topics on this podcast, and I'm so glad that so many people are a part of the conversation. So if you don't follow me on other socials quite yet, I'll get a lot of hate for saying this on YouTube, on Instagram, and Twitter. So that being said, I'm going to get into the questions here. So the first question, and this person prefaces by saying, my question is loaded. What are your thoughts on the whole COVID vaccine stitch? Okay, so I will admit that at the beginning of COVID, when nobody really knew what was going on, I was a COVID Karen. I would criticize people for traveling. I would criticize people for not wearing a mask. I made my own mask at home during the beginning of COVID. I lived in Florida for the first half of COVID, and I was just not a good person in retrospect. I will admit that. But as new information became available, and as I realized that the restrictions were really strict, I definitely backed up on how I had been initially approaching COVID. So I moved to Colorado in June of 2020, and that is when I really realized that COVID restrictions were crazy. I mean, I had to wear a mask at the gym, and coming from Florida and going to Colorado, you have to deal with the altitude change. And on top of that, I had to wear a mask while exercising indoors. So it was really frustrating. It was a really frustrating time. And I realized that maybe this has gone a little bit too far. Did I get vaccinated? Yes, I got the Pfizer vaccine because I wanted to keep my job. And it's crazy how, they were threatening people with that at the time. And I got the Pfizer first and second shot. I did not get a booster at any point in time. I don't plan to get a booster ever. I don't plan to get another COVID shot. But that being said, I think that it's really interesting how everybody finally realized that, that the vaccine wasn't as effective as they claimed it was. And there was a lot of information that came out at the end that turned out that really made the vaccine seem obsolete. There wasn't really a good reason to get vaccinated unless you were immunocompromised or you just wanted to. In the end, I think that the COVID vaccine should have just been voluntary. It shouldn't have been required by anyone because we did not have enough information about it at the time. And especially if you were young and healthy, there was absolutely no need for you to get vaccinated. So I think that people really were dramatic about it, and it's really unfortunate in the aftermath, the destruction that is caused to some people's bodies. Thankfully, I haven't had any issues since getting vaccinated, but I definitely don't plan to do that again in the future. So those are my overall thoughts on the COVID vaccine. I think that it was too advertised. They had the whole, if you got a shot, then you could get a free pack of fries from Five Guys or something like that in New York. They're giving out gift cards to people who got vaccinated when nobody really understood the efficacy of the vaccine in question. So moving on. The next question is, do you have any thoughts on alternative economic systems outside of the standard free market versus market plus socialized programs versus command economy paradigm, specifically distributionism. So first time I read this question, I was very overwhelmed. I didn't know what they were saying, so I'm going to translate it. This person is basically asking if I have any other alternative economic systems outside of capitalism versus socialism. It took me a while, but I think I finally got it. So I don't think that capitalism is that great. I don't think that it's a perfect economic system, nor do I think that socialism is a perfect economic system. Of course, I think that socialism is atrocious. And I think that a perfect economic system, or at least a close to perfect economic system, has a mixture of both systems that leans slightly to the capitalism side. So I think that capitalism is good in the sense that it encourages people to go out and make money. If your hard work and your work is a direct correlation of how much money you make, I think that people should be able to make almost infinite money. And if you're willing to put in that time and effort and work that other people are not willing to do to make an extra dime or dollar, then more power to you. I think that encourages and pushes people to achieve great things. That is the beauty of capitalism. That being said, I think that there should be social safety nets for people that fall on hard times. So say a single mother and her partner just passed away and she has a newborn baby and she can't go back to work quite yet. I think that there should be social safety nets for people in those situations to help them out, to make sure that they have food to eat or their child has food to eat and they have a decent place to live. I think that should be reserved for difficult times, only I don't think that that should be the baseline, because I don't think that does a very good job of encouraging people to strive to achieve better, to earn more, and to just do better with their lives. So I think that the ideal economic system is a mixture of both capitalism and socialism, slightly on the capitalism side. Well, I'd say majority on the capitalism side, with a sliver of socialism for extreme exceptions and cases. I'd say, for example, that person should not go into debt for getting cancer or giving birth. And I think that the way that our economic system is set up right now in the United States is not ideal, but I think that it definitely has strong suits in certain places. So yeah, that's my final answer. A mixture of both. That's like maybe 70% capitalism, 30% socialism. Okay, next question. How limited or hands-off do you think the federal government should be in financial matters? Should it bail out banks when they fail? Or just let them go under no matter what happens as a result? Most importantly, why or why not? Okay, so this is very relevant given how things transpired with Silicon Valley Bank in California. I think that it's interesting because these companies, these banks, right, provide funding to companies that employ thousands of people. So ideally, no, I don't want to see these companies go down as a result of the banks failing. But that being said, I don't believe that, and this is going to be a hot take probably, but I don't believe that the government should try to control the economy, because they can't control it. They're only pushing out the inevitable. That's why I think that the Fed should go, because increasing interest rates and decreasing interest rates to try to push these things off doesn't really help. Eventually the market's going to go down. Eventually the market's going to go back up. Eventually people are going to lose their jobs. Eventually people are going to have so many job options and job opportunities that they will be overwhelmed. you just need to let the market run its course. You need to let the economy run its course. I don't think that the government forcing their hand to try to like push off these recessions is helpful. I really don't. I think that it's going to happen anyway. So do I think that the government should be hands off when it comes to financial matters? Yes, I do. I really do. For the most part, I do. Because they can only control so much. And bailing out banks, if a bank fails, they fail. You can't do much about it. And trying to bail out these banks as they did in 2008, it happens regardless. People will lose their jobs and people will suffer financially for a bit of time. That's why you have to have a good emergency fund to fund those times when things go awry, because it's inevitable, unfortunately. So yeah, that's my final answer there, is that the government should not have a say in financial matters, should be completely hands off in financial matters and let it run its course. Okay, so I thought this question was interesting. Moving on to the next question here. Thoughts on postmodernism. I will admit that I was not familiar with this term prior to reading this question. And I won't say that I'm an expert on this topic at all. But according to the internet, as a philosophy, postmodernism rejects concepts of rationality, objectivity, and universal truth. Instead, it emphasizes the diversity of human experience and multiplicity of perspectives. I talk about this on my page quite a bit, and the whole premise of the page is that people have different perspectives and different experiences, and they bring that to the comment section in the questions that I ask. It's a beautiful thing when people share why they see things differently in a respectful way. Absolutely. I think that is so, so, so important for other people to understand the perspective of others as well. But that being said, I think that there are universal truths. I recently did a question on this. Are there absolute truths? I believe that there are absolute truths, but a lot of things are subjective. Like I use the example of 2 + 2 equaling 4. 2 + 2 will always equal 4 in a vacuum. It will always equal 4 in South America and Asia, whatever. It will always be equal to 4. We can't change that fact. It's a universal truth. But I think that it's also important to understand that different experiences exist for different human beings. And this is going to be relevant to my next question too. But the truth is the truth, no matter where it's told, no matter who tells it, there are universal truths. So my overall thoughts on postmodernism is that it's great in concept for many things, and that actually I think that it's great in concept for anything. People are allowed to share their truths and their experiences, because there's your truth, there's my truth, and there is the truth. Our worldviews, our perspectives, our experiences will shape how we see the world. And I think that it's important to take that into consideration when talking to people, addressing people, what have you. But it's also important to take into consideration that the truth is the truth, no matter where it's told. Okay, so last question here. Will you address your stance on respecting people's chosen pronouns? Okay, so we talked about truths in the last question, and I'm going to talk about truths here too. I will preface this question by saying that I think that it's important to respect everyone, regardless of how they decide to live their lives. I think that no one should be met with violence. No one should be met with hatred, pure hatred. And I don't believe that people should conform to exactly the way that I decide to live my life or my beliefs. Now, I talk about American individualism quite a bit on my page and why I love it. And this is one of the reasons why I love American individualism, is that you can identify as whatever you want. I can't control that, and I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Choose how you want to identify. That's great. But I don't have to conform to the way that you decide to live your life. If you decide to identify as a cat, I'm not going to address you as cat, because you're either a man or a woman, or you're intersex, but 99% of cases, you are a man or a woman. And how you are born is how you are. If you are a trans woman, you are a man at the end of the day. This is not hateful. This is truth. You are a man at the end of the day, even if you appear to be a woman by appearance. At the end of the day, you are a man. A trans man is still a woman that appears to be a man, but at the end of the day, they are still a woman. So I think that it's important to approach this with factual information, right? I don't say any of this to be hurtful to people, but it is the truth at the end of the day. So if you decide to identify as whatever you want to identify as, then sure, go off and do that wherever you want to do that. But I think that it's very narcissistic to believe that other people must conform to the way that you decide to live your life. Because I don't expect people to conform to the way that I decide to live my life, because you may have different experiences and different perspectives, and that's totally fine. In America, you can live your life virtually however you want to, as long as you're not hurting another person, especially a child. So, will I use someone's chosen pronouns in a professional work setting? Absolutely, because I got to make a living, even though I don't agree with it, unfortunately. But in any other setting, I think that it's kind of silly. I honestly think it's kind of silly, especially the pronouns outside of she, her, he, him. You lost me. Like, I am not gonna, I'd probably laugh. I think that it's kind of silly, because I think that the person is joking with me if they use pronouns outside of that. And I'd like to think that I'm very understanding and open-minded to various different things, but this is just not one of those things that I'm willing to sacrifice my values on. But that's something that they can live by if they choose. But I'm not going to go out of my way and make people feel, invalidate people in how they feel about themselves. It's just not my job, and nor should anyone else, as in you're allowed to disagree with me in that. But I will never be mean or hateful or vindictive against someone that chooses to use pronouns that I don't agree with. And another thing on this, this person had also mentioned in their question, is the whole cisgender thing, or cis woman, cis man. I think that it really takes away from the experiences of being a woman. And there are a lot of parts of being a woman that trans women will never understand. You know, conceiving a child, or giving birth to a child, or going through a painful period. I mean, that's TMI, but that's something that trans women will never experience. So I don't really understand this immense push to really invalidate the experiences of a lot of women by just saying, oh, if you decide to be a woman, okay, yeah, then you're a woman. That's just not how the world works. If I decide one day to be white, because I'm obviously black, if I decide one day that I want to be white, I could paint my face whatever color I want, but at the end of the day, I'm still black. That's how I was born. There's nothing I can do in my power to change the fact that I am black. So if I need other people to conform and validate me and say, yeah, you're white, you're totally white, if I decide to change my skin color, then there's something that I need to work on. That if I need society to validate me and who I am, and I need other people to respect how I decide to address myself, then there's something that's something that I really need to work on myself. I can't expect people to make me feel good about myself at the end of the day. So I kind of see it as the same thing. I talked about this on my page previously as well. I see trans individuals as the same thing as trans racialism. You can transition to a different race, but at the end of the day, you are the race that you were born. There's no surgery, there's no anything that can change that fact about you. And I think that the more people just accept that, the easier life will become for them. Again, I respect all people. I won't go out of my way to be hurtful to someone that struggles with gender issues. Everybody goes through a different experience and everybody goes through something unique and they have a different world perspective. But I will not sit there and conform to their lifestyle similar to a cigarette smoker. I'm not going to sit there and say, yeah, that's very good for your health. That's perfect. That's totally fine. Yeah. Like, screw what I'm saying. Like, let's just ignore science and biology and just admit that smoking is perfectly fine for your health. No, it's going to say, like, this is just not natural. This is not something that I agree with. And you as an adult have the right to smoke a cigarette, but I don't have to sit there and say, yes, you smoking that cigarette is good. So that is my overall stance on using or respecting someone's chosen pronouns. I respect people. I don't necessarily respect every single ideology that exists out there. And I have the right to disagree with the way that people live their lives, as do other people have to disagree with the way that I live my life. That is American individualism. So that's the beauty of it. So that was the last question for today. I think that these were really great questions. I think that the pronoun question was a very good one. And it's important to discuss this stuff today, considering how everything is really going. So, yeah, I think these were a great set of questions, and yeah, made me really think about my stance on these issues. So, that being said, I don't say any of this to be rude. I don't say any of this to be hateful. I say all of this to be honest. Thank you for listening. I hope to see you next time.